What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Open Great League once again, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today is actually from a submission through Simbad. Now, Simbad submitted a team of Dusclops, Blastoise, and both Furret and Marowak. We've got some battles with Furret, some with Marowak, and I'll explain that in a bit. He said, "Dear Mark, I thought I'd have trouble finding a team that worked and I liked, but I really like these Mons, and this season I got to Veteran even earlier than the last. I'm not playing any cups, just tried a bit of Hisui Cup and decided I'm done forever, so I'm not super stressed about the fact that every time I get to Veteran, I start losing like a dog. The skill gap after 2500 is nasty. Never gotten past 2540. If you have some advice for that, I'd appreciate it. We'll take a look during these battles. The first battles are with Furret in the back instead of Marowak. That team was great, but after hitting Veteran, I dropped to 2200 elo, so I changed it a bit to climb back. Nice, you adapted, and I feel that this team is even better. I play significantly worse when I'm recording, so the ones with Furret are worse because I started to gather footage. I think I've improved since last video, especially in energy management and winning more consistently. Still a lot to work on, but I'm happy overall. There are no losses today. I just want to show off my dog as skills. All right, so we are going to take a look at those skills today, and I'll give you any input that I can find, even though these are only wins. But yeah, I think there was one other thing I wanted to comment on, but I already forget what it was. So, oh, that you said you play significantly worse when you're recording. I felt that way at first when I did too, and then I was like, wait, I actually just make these mistakes and I'm only more like hyper aware of them when I'm recording. But before we hop into the battles, I want to say a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel: Benny Hemlock, Dr. Green Mustache, and Soham Patil, as well as the legend trainer members on this channel: Big Burden, Andrew Pitten, Moosachu, Noodleman, Speedster, Estros, and Liminal Lagomorph. So without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Alright, so into the first match, we've got Dusclops into Greninja. This is a terrible lead. We're going to safe switch into our Furret, and the opponent is staying in. Obviously, Sucker Punches are resisted, so they're going to chip first with the Hydro Cannon, and then dip out of this matchup. That's exactly what they're going to do. Are we going to go for one in the move? No, we're going to go for three in the move, and end up throwing on alignment, allowing our opponent to catch, which is pretty unfortunate. But the opponent shields anyways, knowing you had enough for the Trailblaze. I'm not expecting you to go for a Swift. Ideal fast move timing there would be 4 Sucker Punches, not 5, in order to get off this Trailblaze. That way you'd get 1 extra boosted Sucker Punch there. And then unfortunately you do get 1 turn lag, which is pretty unfortunate. But in comes the Dusclops. Dusclops will be hit with a Bone Club, but Dusclops can absorb that, no problem. Here comes Bone Club number 2. Just going to take this, and then are we going to farm up 3 more, or are we just going to instantly reset? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, 1 Ice Punch probably not enough to KO, so coming in with the Blastoise here is fine, getting a little bit of an energy head start. However, rollout is resisted, so in order to do any meaningful damage, we will have to pick up the knockout here with a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon from this range, more than enough to knock out the Marowak. Is the lead going to come back in? No, it's going to be a Dusclops in the back. And for some reason, we're overfarming and playing to a CMP tie that we do not win. So now forced to commit the final shield of this matchup before we even chip with a Hydro Cannon. Maybe potentially watching for a catch, but it is a 3-turn move. You can wait the turn. 1 Hydro Cannon connects. You got to throw here. No, instead we're going to go for a Snipe with an Ice Punch. Shadow Punch is super effective here. So yeah, this not enough to KO, which means they will... WinCon equals Hail Mary. I'm not even sure what that means. Okay, you're full sending a Skull Bash. They end up catching on Greninja, which is either a fantastic read from you or a very unfortunate play for the opponent. That allows you to outpace to a Hydro Cannon, and wow, that matchup was messy, but you are able to take a Game 1 win. Into next match, we've got Dusclops into Primeape. Now this is a decent lead. Of course, Karate Chop and Close Combat are resisted. However, Primeape's pacing is absolutely insane, which means they can get to a super effective Rage Fist before you even get to a Shadow Punch. And it looks like you can take 2 of those. You are going to throw 1 in the move, making sure to throw on good timing. Shadow Punch won't be enough to pick up the knockout, but it will grab a shield from the opponent, and the opponent is actually going to play to a CMP tie, winning that. I would have gone for the extra Hex because you would have been able to outpace either way. You could have undertapped the move afterwards after getting that full Hex through, because now they can very comfortably survive that and they're going to be able to outpace you here. So you are going to play out the 2 shield scenario, it looks like, but they have a pacing advantage here. So this is not one you're ever going to win. Yeah, you can't get the farm down before they make it to another Rage Fist. So going to go for a Shadow Punch. Is the opponent going to let this go? They are. So they've grabbed both shields from you, and now in comes Azumarill. Azumarill will be met with a neutral Shadow Punch, but it's going to take probably like 5 of these in order to pick up the knockout. So we're going to pivot into our Furret, seeing if we can bait out anything in the back. We've already seen the fighter, so we know that safe switching a Furret is actually a really safe play here. So I actually like this switch. We grab the shield with the Trailblaze, which is nice, and now our next Trailblaze is going to do even more damage. One play rough is not going to be enough to knock out the bulky Furret. Going to be able to get to the Trailblaze right as they make a really nice catch onto their Credilli. It looks like it was a Bullet Seed Credilli, and it is. And unfortunately, that means they're going to outpace you here, pick up the knockout with the Rock Tomb, but you have a Blastoise. I believe Blastoise wins CMP against Credilli. I imagine it's close, but a Hydro Cannon from this range should be enough to pick up the knockout, but instead, we're going to overcomplicate this for a little bit, go for the catch, maybe trying to overfarm, get a little bit of extra energy for the Azumarill that comes back in, but that gives the opponent a chance to catch here, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I like the little comments that you've added, but unfortunately, making this game way harder than it needs to be. But now, because we know that the Credilli has banked 3 Bullet Seeds worth of energy, that means they're 1 off, which means we need to overfarm by quite a bit here. It looks like we can't do Skull Bash and come out with 3 residual, so just going to go for the Hydro Cannon. Not enough to pick up the knockout here. Can we get to the back-to-back Hydros? Not quite, but we're 1 away, and we know Blastoise wins CMP. So the end result is going to be the same as what I originally said. But we made this matchup quite a bit more difficult than it needed to be. That said, Hydro Cannon from this range definitely picks up the knockout, and we are able to take the win. Okay, now we've got Marowak on the lead, and Marowak into Greninja is not a great matchup because obviously Water Shurikens are super effective, and they have quite a bit of a pacing advantage. They have high incentive to bait here as well, and that's exactly what they're going to do, and they get the attack boost, which is really unfortunate. But I like the play that you're making is that, you know what, you get the attack boost, I'm just going to get rid of you. I'm going to fully Mud Slap, farm you down. Doesn't matter how many times you bait, Mud Slap will pick up the knockout. And yep, that is the power of Kanto Marowak in the 2-shield scenario. Despite it having a kind of a negative matchup type-wise, it has just a positive matchup because of the Mud Slap damage. And we come out with loads of Bone Clubs to threaten the Furret in the back. I honestly would have banked that last Bone Club and then probably come in with my own Furret. Actually, no, you're running Dusclops and Blastoise in the back. So, but you come in with a with your Dusclops here. And I'm sorry, what was that on my screen? Oh, it was a Dedenne. Okay, so Dedenne is now going to connect with the Parabolic Charge, boosting their defense. And it looks like 2 aren't quite going to be enough to KO, but they can definitely live another Shadow Punch here. I'm surprised they didn't shield the first. I guess they know they have such a negative matchup. Never mind, what do I know? I was going to say they have such a negative matchup against Marowak on the lead, so there's not really any point in them shielding the Dedenne, but what do I know? The opponent is making some interesting plays, but now here comes a Shadow Punch. This will not be enough to pick up the knockout here. Of course, the defense buff. In comes the Marowak. We tried to snipe at the Mud Slap, but instead the opponent reads us like a book, connects with a Swift against our Marowak, but now they are energy dry. Can we get the full farm down? Not quite. This should only be enough for a Swift, I believe. They shouldn't be able to get to a Trailblaze, yeah, and Swift is not going to do that much damage to big man Blastoise. Blastoise able to outpace the Dedenne as well, get to a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon from this range is massive overkill. It picks up the knockout on the Dedenne, and we are able to take the win. Marowak into Dunsparce. This is a very nice lead because rollout is resisted and the opponent is staying in this matchup. So very nice that we've got a very good matchup in the lead and the opponent is stuck staying in it because something is clearly weak to Marowak in the back. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't play out this matchup this long, especially because the pacing between both Dunsparce and Marowak is exactly the same. But unfortunately, you overfarm, maybe not realizing that you win CMP, and that allows your opponent to grab a shield in a matchup that they shouldn't have been able to grab from you. That said, in comes a Blastoise, and now Blastoise will be met by an onslaught of these Bone Clubs. Bone Club number 1 Here comes Bone Club number 2, and we're already at the back-to-back Bone Clubs. I'm actually not sure who wins CMP in this matchup. I imagine it is the Marowak, but it's probably close. The opponent doesn't actually go for the charge move, but instead, you still are able to catch this energy onto your Dusclops in the back. Dusclops easily able to absorb Hydro Cannons here. It can take 2 comfortably, absolutely no problem. Dusclops is just extremely bulky. Can we get the Hex farm down is the question. That might be bold, but it looks like we can. Coming out with 100 energy. What's in the back? It's a Shadow Scizor. This is an instance where you wouldn't want to go for good timing because you're already over 100 energy. That said, you still should get to back-to-back Shadow Punches, and you did grab a shield from the Scizor, but one of those will connect. And now you've got a Marowak with energy and a Blastoise that all we have to do now is make it to a singular Hydro Cannon. So instantly pivoting, I like this play. They can outpace you to 1 Trailblazer, but they cannot outpace you to 2. Letting this go, that could be kind of risky here. It is the Night Slash bait though. And yeah, as soon as that bait is called, the opponent knows it's over. So they will resign the match. Into the next match, kind of a neutral lead as we've seen in these past leads where we've got a ground into a water, and this ground is picking up all of these lead wins. So being able to force switch on the lead is extremely nice against everything that isn't like a jump bluff basically, or a Mandibuzz. That said, our pacing is also exactly the same in this matchup. You have to commit a shield in the first, whereas the opponent doesn't. However, they will have to commit a shield in the second if they want to grab that second shield from you, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Now the question is, can you get 4 Mud Slaps in, in order to pick up the knockout before they get to a Surf? And it looks like the answer is no. Gonna go for a catch onto the Dusclops. Very nice play there. Did you have Blastoise in the back? Yeah, I would have made that catch where it's resisted on Blastoise, if I'm honest, because I wouldn't expect them to have an answer to Blastoise in the back, but in fact, they do have a Credilli, so having no answer to the Dusclops is nice. Able to connect with an Ice Punch, and Acid in this matchup is resisted, so the opponent can go for a Grass Knot. That does some pretty sizable damage, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout, and they never have an ability to farm you down, so now able to get to the Ice Punch. Ice Punch picks up the knockout on the Credilli, able to flip switch. What is that Pokemon in the back? All we have to do is worry about that Jellicent getting to a charge move, making a catch, sorry, not to a charge move, but it's a Shadow Metang in the back. Now Metang does have access to buffed Psyshock, and we just have to watch for a catch here. Almost at the back-to-back, the opponent does not go for a catch, but it looks like they might outpace you to another move. Are you going to get there? No, you are going to outpace. It looks like just barely able to make it to a Hydro Cannon. Is this enough to grab the final shield? It is. The opponent has to commit a shield there. They overfarm as much as possible. Now they're going to pick up the knockout with the Psyshock. And yeah, I just don't see a way out of this game. You do have a very healthy Marowak, so as long as they don't have too much residual energy, you should be able to fully Mud Slap farm them down. You go for a Peekaboo play. You get the catch. That is absolutely massive because I think they had the ability to make 2 Psyshocks, so getting that is super nice. You actually don't really need the farm down because the Jellicent is energy dry. You could have just thrown the charge move. Maybe you're just watching for a catch, but even if they went for it, like, you were going to end up going for the farm down either way. So able to take the win. And into the next match, we've got Marowak into Skeledirge. This is a fantastic lead. The opponent is going to save switch into an Acid Credilli, and I like this play. Stay in, chip with a Bone Club because this is actually on good timing because of the 1-turn switch. And then where do you go from here? I would go Dusclops instantly. I would not take this charge move unnecessarily. As soon as you chip with that Bone Club, you should instantly be getting out into your Dusclops, but instead, you're going to bank all of that energy after hitting some debuffed Mud Slaps. They do go for a Grass Knot. It's not enough to pick up the knockout. You can just Shadow Punch from this range, or you can go for the full farm down because 2 Grass Knots are non-threatening. So coming out with a little bit of energy here is always nice as well. Your Rock Tomb will connect. Back in comes the Skeledirge, but Skeledirge now will be met with a Shadow Punch. This is super effective damage, so even though it is debuffed, actually it looks like it's still going to take 3 of those. So, but you are at 3 charge moves here. You will be able to throw 1 Hex and another charge move, so that is really nice. Yeah, this is also why Dusclops is incredibly high ranked. It just does things like this, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Its pacing is absolutely absurd. What's in the back? It's a Como-O, and now Como-O is actually a really difficult Pokemon for this team to see in the back, but we're just going to use the Overload strategy. No way they're going to full send the nuke move there, so Just going to go for the Hydro Cannon, knowing that they kind of have to shield this, otherwise they're going to be in Mud Slap farm down range. I like this play. Just go for another Hydro Cannon. Looks like they're going to commit to the Dragon Tail farm down, but that's okay. Hydro Cannon grabs the second shield from the opponent. I'm surprised they shielded both those up. Where are we going to go from here? Are we going to come in with the Marowak? We are. Are we going to go for a catch? No, we're going to go for the Bone Club on the CMP tie with the opponent. They might be at back-to-back moves here. So, oh no, they actually didn't throw it. Maybe they were waiting the turn, but now they're going to be forced to throw. So I would throw this Mud Slap and then instantly pivot into Dusclops. But no, they actually waited the turn. But yeah, either way, they end up not throwing their energy, and you are able to take the win. Into next match, bit of a tricky lead. We've got Marowak into Quagsire. Now Quagsire, of course, does have super effective Aqua Tail, and they end up throwing on the CMP tie, knowing that you might throw an alignment and punishing you for that, allowing them to outpace and not let a Mud Slap in for free. So very nice play by the opponent. Here comes a Bone Club. That's going to grab a shield from the opponent, knowing that they can outpace. And now in comes Dusclops. Dusclops will be able to catch an Aqua Tail and eat that no problem. What's their response? They have a Moltres in the back, and that's not that surprising. We've seen these Mudboy plus Fire Cores, and seeing Moltres plus Quagsire, it's been pretty much everywhere, so I'm not surprised to see this team. That said, they are still going to be forced to throw energy because a second Ice Punch would threaten the knockout here. Fly, however, will pick up the knockout on the Dusclops. In comes Blastoise. We have super effective rollouts for this matchup, but we will be forced to commit the shield. They end up throwing an alignment that is super nice, allowing an entire rollout in for free, and they full send a Brave Bird, which means you can just easily get this farm down without them making another charge move. What wants to take this energy is the question. Who wants to take a Skull Bash? It looks like it's going to be the Quagsire that comes back in. Quagsire now will be met with a Hydro Cannon. That's all it's going to take in order to pick up the knockout on the Quagsire here. They're just going to sacrifice it, and now in comes Drapion. Drapion will be met with Hydro Cannon number 1. And as soon as this connects, do we see a pivot? No, we're actually going to stay in this matchup and connect with a second Hydro Cannon. I would have just come with my Marowak and Mud Slap them down because they can't make multiple charge moves, but instead you're going to grab that final shield. In comes the Marowak. You can take an Aqua Tail here, so this is pretty non-threatening, and they're not at the back-to-back, I believe. Oh, it actually is a CMP tie. Does that make any sense? They threw one in the move. No, that doesn't make any sense, but either way, you are able to take that win. Into next match, mirror leads. We got Marowak into Marowak. So this is going to come down to CMP, and I have a feeling with IVs like this, you are not going to win it. But you actually do. 2-14-14 coming in clutch. The opponent had the identical CP, so it's honestly, I'm curious to know whether they actually have the exact same IVs as you do. That would be pretty crazy, and that means it would actually be up to a coin flip of whether who wins CMP. Both of you go for a catch, and both of you are running Dusclops in the back, so far, mirror teams, but the opponent has an extra shield advantage in this matchup. So, and they win CMP this time in this matchup. So a bit of a flip from what we saw on the lead. That said, it looks like 2 Shadow Punches might not quite be enough to pick up the knockout. So just going to let this go. Maybe get an energy lead either on your Blastoise or your Marowak, because you know your Marowak does win CMP. So that could be an option there. They commit the shield. You're actually going to let them get the full farm down. I'm not sure I love that, but in comes the Marowak. Marowak can chip them with a Bone Club. However, this is not enough to pick up the knockout here. The opponent's going to shield, throw their energy right away. Did you get an Ice Punch catch? Yes, you did. That is absolutely massive. Instead of coming in with their Marowak loaded on energy, instead they're going to come in with a Credilli. I'm not sure about that play, but at least this forces you to go for Hydro Cannons. They full send the Grass Knot and not going for the Rock Tomb bait. That is absolutely massive. That is a huge shield call. Here comes Hydro Cannon number 1. This will do some solid chip, but it's not enough to 2-shot the Credilli, which is pretty unfortunate, which means we might need a catch out of this matchup, and I frankly just do not see a win con. The opponent has energy banked on their Marowak, but there is the win con. The opponent throwing on alignment, punishing that with a catch on your Marowak. It is the Grass Knot. That is absolutely massive. Now, can we get the rollout farm down? It's going to be close, and it looks like we can. The opponent worried about it, switches into the Dusclops. Dusclops now will be met with a Hydro Cannon before they can make it to a Shadow Punch, and now all this residual energy going to CMP tie the Marowak and win it. I don't know if they got one turn lag or if Blastoise just wins CMP in that matchup. Able to get the Hydro Cannon off, roll out, farm down the Credilli, and somehow, some way, you were able to take that win. abysmal lead. In the next match, we've got Marowak into Gligar. We're going to save switch into our Dusclops, and the opponent goes for a CMP dig as soon as you make it to the Dusclops, and the Dusclops was unanswered, and that's because they have Credilli in the back. That is pretty interesting, considering Gligar has 2 weaknesses. One of them is Ice, and then you have an Ice Pokemon in the back, a Pokemon weak to Ice in the back. Very strange, but either way, this is awesome for Dusclops because Dusclops can absolutely feast here. Yeah, just going for the Shadow Punch at this range, it's not enough to KO, but it will put them in Hex farm down range. So I like this play. Yeah, look at that. I know my damage counts. They will be able to connect with a Grass Knot here. Grass Knot not enough to pick up the knockout. Acids are resisted, so you are able to flip switch here, and that is actually pretty nice because yes, they have a Dusclops in the back, but you can now align your Marowak here, commit the shields as you need, and then just run with Blastoise to win this game. You can take 1 Ice Punch, and you do unfortunately get 1 turn lag, which is really unfortunate for a 3-turn user that does a lot of damage with its fast move. Now you just kind of have to watch for a catch here. They went for it right as you got to the Bone Club, so good on you. Nice heads up. In comes the Gligar. Gligar now met with the Blastoise, and this is where Blastoise thrives. Dig does absolutely nothing to Blastoise because it is non-shadow on non-shadow. Both of these Pokemon have some decent bulk. Here comes Hydro Cannon number 1. The opponent is going to shield that up. Can you make it to a second Hydro Cannon? Not before the opponent makes it to another dig. I believe you would survive this. It is just the Aerial Ace instead. Now just watch for a catch. Switch Timer not quite up yet. Hydro Cannon is super effective. It should be enough to pick up the knockout on the Gligar, and it is. I would just stay in this matchup and force them to throw. No, instead you're going to go for a Shadow Punch catch onto your Marowak. Marowak takes that with ease, and now you have the Bone Club loaded. This will do some solid chip, and you have the ability to make a Hydro Cannon later in this matchup as long as the opponent isn't able to farm up 2 back-to-back moves. This for sure is non-threatening. Even an Ice Punch will pick up the knockout after 1 more Hex, but they are not in a charge move, and Blastoise wins CMP by a mile in this matchup. Maybe not by a mile, but definitely going to win it. Hydro Cannon picks up the knockout on the Dusclops, and you are able to take that win. So overall, some very nice plays, definitely a lot of misplays in those first few matchups, kind of as you stated. I think a lot of your issues come down to throwing on alignment, maybe not understanding your win condition in some of these matchups. But overall, very strong play, definitely better than when you first submitted. I can see the improvement already, like by a long shot. So definitely gotten a lot better there. And overall, I like the team. I think Marowak is just so ridiculously strong. As long as the opponent doesn't have a Mud Slap resist, that Pokemon is an absolute demon. You basically never need to get out of the lead unless it has a Mud Slap resist. And even then, in those matchups where there is a Mud Slap resist, other than something like the new Toedscruel, Rock Slide usually hits for super effective damage. When you think of everything that resists Mud Slap, you've got Bug types, you've got Flyers. So if you can switch out of that matchup, even if you aren't able to flip switch, just getting an energy lead on the Marowak and then having those Rock Slides to threaten the Pokemon that come back in just makes this Pokemon such a versatile Pokemon. That said, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.